What is good, all of our listeners? Welcome to another episode of Games and Groceries. My name is Adam.
I'm Liz.
And I struggle with the idea that I'm the bad guy. We'll get to that new segment in just a bit, but just to give you introductions, again, my name is Adam.
And I'm Liz.
So, Liz, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
It was a pretty easy week.
Yeah, kind of was.
My boss forced me to take a half day, told me to live a little.
Yeah.
So I got to take a half day, and then we chilled 4th of July, and I did some good work in the yard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Made very good accomplishments.
Pretty good week. Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty easy streak week. It's 4th of July week this past week, so not a lot of work, but it was still a good week. Still a good, easy week. So we got a lot to talk about this week. We got a lot to say about our big topic, which is all about Sea of Solitude. But before we get there, we got some other segments to give you. But before we get to those segments,
Oh my.
yeah, I know. We want to just remind all of our audience that you can follow us on the social medias. First, we're on Twitter. You can follow the official Twitter account of Games and Groceries at Gaming Groceries. Or you can follow us individually. I'm at Ace the Grocer.
And I'm at Journey First.
So you can follow us individually, be friends with us on Twitter, and just, start a conversation. You can also follow us on Instagram, Games and Groceries, all one word, where we share updates about the podcast, gaming memes, and behind-the-scenes photos. So definitely follow us on Instagram, Games and Groceries, all one word. And definitely check out our website, gamesandgroceries.com, where you can listen to all of the episodes from the website, find out where you can listen to the episodes, as well as some articles that I write and put up on the website. So definitely check that out. And finally, we just want to remind everybody, if you're listening to us on the audio version, whether it be on iTunes, iHeartRadio, anywhere else that you can rate and review us, definitely give us your honest feedback, give your honest star ratings so that we can read it on the podcast. And if you would like me to read your review on the podcast, you can email us contact at gamesandgroceries.com. And if you would like me to read your review, just say, hey, read my review, and send me a screenshot of the review, and I can read to you in this voice.
No.
So I think that's all of the announcements that we do have. Anything else we need to add?
Not that I know of.
Yeah. So definitely rate and review us. Oh, there is one other thing. Subscribe to us on YouTube.
Yes.
If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. If you're watching us on YouTube, definitely hit that subscribe button, like, and definitely give us a comment down below. What did you think of some of our segments? We're going to be talking about Spider-Man Far From Home. We're going to be talking about 3 different news segments, and we're also going to be talking about Sea of Solitude. So definitely write down below in the comment section about what you thought about our show, or if you have any thoughts about Sea of Solitude, or are you excited about Sea of Solitude? Definitely write that down below. And like I said, subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed it. So with all that said and done, let's just go into our first segment.
Movie Minutes.
Movie Minutes is a segment where we talk about the movies that we saw in the past week, whether it be on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, or in theaters, and we like to tell you whether we recommend it or we don't recommend it. So this week's movie is in theaters right now, and it's a little movie called Spider-Man Far From Home. Is the, of course, sequel to Spider-Man Homecoming. It is the last movie in Phase 3 of the MCU, and let's just talk about the movie right now. Liz, opening thoughts. What did you think of the movie?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was a good movie. I really like Tom Holland as Spider-Man. When we saw Homecoming, I was happy. It was good. But yeah, it was a good movie. I enjoyed it. Good story.
Yeah. Totally. So we want to just talk about it for the next 10 minutes and just talking about what we thought about Spider-Man Far From Home. I have 3 notes here. First note that this is definitely a post-Endgame story. So if you have not seen Endgame, you need to see Endgame before you go see Spider-Man Far From Home. And if you do not want any spoilers, definitely go into the time links that are in the description, whether you're in audio or YouTube. You can just skip ahead to the next segment. But this is definitely a post-Endgame story. So let's talk about that. It has the same wit and charm that Homecoming does, because Homecoming was very funny. It was very teenage drama, but very teenage comedy. However, it has the human emotions of what they call post-blip.
Yeah.
What they called the Thanos snap was the blip. So you got to see the after effects of what happened when the people came back from the blip. The younger siblings became older than the older siblings because time really kind of stopped for them.
Yeah.
So you get to see some of the emotions and some of the after effects of that blip. And you get to see some of Spider-Man of what happened to him. Mm-hmm. Again, spoilers ahead. Go down in a time link. And if you want to skip ahead, don't want to see any spoilers. 3, 2, 1. His after effects of after Iron Man dies and the father figure of what he was about, and you get to see that people are thinking that he is going to be the next lead Avenger, and he's not ready to take that responsibility. Yeah. So, did you have any thoughts of that dynamic?
It really just made me sad the whole time because everyone was expecting him to step up and just be okay, and really, the only person who was really comforting him was Happy, and that's because Happy was Iron Man's best friend.
Yeah.
You know, so it was just kind of sad the whole time to see, like, Spider-Man, like, he's just this kid trying to cope with this huge loss in his life again. Yeah. And no one cared. It was sad.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you can really tell where the next chapters are going of the next MCU because...
Oh, yeah, they definitely have laid the footwork, like, this is where we're going.
Yeah, for Phase 4. In Phase 4, there's some rumors that the champions are going to come in. The champions, of course, is with Miss Marvel, not Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, Ang Lee, Supernova. Yeah, I think that is. But the next phase with those, and you can see that there's going to be a lot of humor with this because even Nick Fury in this movie was like, whenever he came on screen, it was still humorous.
Yeah.
It was still kind of like funny when he was on screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me go to my second note because the middle sections of this movie, however, the beginning was fantastic. It set the plot really well, but the middle sections kind of felt like a TV story arc where you would see kind of like a Netflix story where it was more of chunks of a story. This happens because this happens. And I kind of expected the scene to go black because like, oh, wait for the next episode.
Yeah. Yeah, so was I kind of.
And it just more felt like not a cinematic story, but a story written very well for a Netflix series, something that you binge.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like a smooth transition into the cinematic.
Yeah. I constantly felt like I was waiting for a commercial break.
Yeah. Since we already said kind of spoilers, we're not saying spoilers for this movie, just for Endgame. But what were some storylines in the middle section that you're just kind of like, eh?
I don't remember specific spots.
Yeah. Like Peter and his love story with MJ.
Yeah.
Like
see, like I wasn't thinking of it in like the way like, oh, this feels like a TV show, but it more felt like I was like after a big thing.
It's hot in here, by the way. Like you're watching this on YouTube. I'm actually just wiping off sweat.
We're just glistening. We put glitter on before this.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
So.
But it wasn't more of that. I felt like it was TV storylines. It was more of that. After something big happened, I felt like I was waiting for a commercial to happen.
Right.
Or for the episode to end. So it wasn't like the specific story, but I guess they did kind of give me that feeling. Like, oh, this is over. But that could also be because I binge TV shows like it's my job. Right.
So the middle sections were a bit slow. And even when there is a twist. It's MCU. There's a twist.
It's a movie. There's a twist.
Yeah. Even when the twist happens, it was just kind of, I don't know, lackluster for me. It didn't really feel like an impact. It felt like, oh, yeah, I kind of saw that one coming.
Yeah. When the twist happened, I wasn't surprised.
Right.
Like in the beginning of the movie, yeah, I would have been surprised. But in that scene, I saw what was about to happen.
Right.
So I didn't see it before that scene. So they did do a good job of hiding it for the long run. But once we made it to that scene, as that scene was coming to a close, I was like, oh, that's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And it did.
Now, as you said before, this is my final note here. Like the entire movie, though, you feel incredibly sad for Peter Parker because he is just trying to cope with the loss of Tony Stark.
Yeah.
He's just trying to cope with that as well as the responsibility that people are expecting him to be, as well as just trying to be a student and trying to be a teenager.
Yeah,
and
he just wants to get the girl.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all he's concerned about. His life has been so crazy. I mean, he disappeared for 5 years, and he's just like, I just want to go back. I just want a normal life.
Yeah.
That's all I want out of this right now. And no one's really allowing him to do that, not even his aunt.
Exactly. My final note on my final note is when I first was watching reviews for this movie, someone had said, like, there's a massive cameo. The cameo made me lose my mind. And so the entire movie, I'm looking for a cameo. I thought I saw Bill Murray at one time.
He convinced himself he saw Bill Murray.
Yeah, I convinced myself I thought I saw Bill Murray. I'm not going to say what the cameo is, but it's in the mid-credits scene.
Yeah, so don't look for it during the movie. Just enjoy the movie.
But when the cameo came on, I lost it in the theater. I was trying my best because there was just a nice family sitting next to us, just in a good outing with their kids. So I didn't know, like, like just trying to like freak out. But it was a really good cameo. It was good. Yeah,
it was real smooth.
So the mid-credit and the end credit scenes are definitely worth waiting for. So sit your butts in your seats and enjoy the ride. Definitely
worth it because it does tell, like, both of them. Like usually with MCU, they the one of them aren't serious. Like usually the end credit scene isn't the serious one.
Right.
Like the mid one is the one that tells you what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But both of these kind of told you what was going on. So they're both very good and both, give insight to the movie and the following movies.
So with our last 2 minutes, let's go into our final ratings, our final verdict. What did you give this movie?
I gave it an 8.
Which is a solid movie.
Yes, it is a solid movie. I enjoyed it. Like I said, there were very few complaints. There was some little pieces of predictability. But otherwise, I thought it was a really good movie. I enjoyed it, and I have no complaints.
Yeah. And I also gave it an 8. Now, on our rating scale, if you're new here, 7 is it's a decent movie. Like, it was decent. 8 is solid. 9 is near perfect. I almost gave it an 8.5. But I just kind of walked out of the theaters thinking, like, you know what? I enjoyed my time. It wasn't just a decent movie. Like, that was good. No, I walked out thinking, like, that was really good.
But you know what? I would own it regardless.
Yes.
Like, we're already in the plans and trying to make sure and trying to collect all the Marvel movies. But even if we weren't doing that, I would own this.
Yeah. So we both gave it an 8 out of 10. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means there were some flaws, but you still walk out thinking, like, no.
You were satisfied.
Yeah. And we highly recommend this movie, especially because you need to see this in theaters pronto and stay off social media because there is a lot to spoil.
Because people are mean.
Yeah. There is a lot to spoil in this movie. There is a lot to spoil. In fact, writing out my notes, I was just thinking, like, oh, man, I better not spoil this. I better not spoil that. But definitely go when you have the chance. Definitely go see this movie because we highly recommend this movie. It is a solid film, not a waste of money, not a waste of time at all. Solid movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
moving on.
Yeah, with that, let's just move on to our second segment.
Top 3 Gaming News.
The top 3 gaming news is the gaming news that we saw in the past week, and we like to rate it 3, 2, 1 just to give you a condensed version of what's going on in the gaming industry in the past week. We like to keep you informed of what your purchases are and what to look out for, all the dangers in the gaming industry, and all the love in the gaming industry.
That was weird.
Thank you. So, let's talk about our first gaming news, which is, of course, Epic is funding the Kickstarter refunds for the Shenmue 3 backers after exclusivity deal. Yeah. So this story comes out this week, and it has been told by Wyna and Deep Silver that's to the Kickstarter backers saying that, hey, Shenmue 3 is going to be on the Epic Store, no longer Steam, even though they already promised their backers that it would be on Steam.
Yeah, that's not good.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't know anything about Kickstarter, of course, is it's where you design an indie game and ask for crowdfunding, saying like, hey, here's my gaming idea. What do you think? Can you help us back it up so that we can produce this game? So this is funded by the crowd. This is funded by the fans. And so Deep Silver went deep pockets and just said, you know what? Your funding isn't good enough. We want the funding from Epic.
Yeah.
Now, Epic really isn't to blame here.
No. I mean, all they did was offer more money back for the person developing it.
Exactly. And backers felt betrayed by all of this, to say that, we were promised a Steam code. We want our money back. And they felt that, listen, if it's not going to be on Steam, then I don't want in on it. So they started to take their money back. But then Epic came to save the day and said, hey, so that YNET is the developer, Deep Silver is the publisher, so that YNET doesn't lose any money for their development funds, they're going to say that, hey, we're going to fund the refunds. You're not going to lose any money. It's okay. So everybody gets their refunds. YNET isn't in a hole, so all well and good. But really, who's to blame here is Deep Silver, because they did this already before with Metro Exodus. If you remember, very last minute, Deep Silver said, hell, you know what? Metro Exodus, going to be an Epic exclusive. And so last minute that when the boxes were given out, given to players, there was actually a sticker over the Steam code saying that you can redeem this over at Epic. Somebody peeled off that sticker and you see that it was Steam. So what do you think about this story?
I think it's very nice of Epic to, cover for the developers. But at the same time, they could have easily said to the backers, like, hey, like, you could have said something about it. You could have just confronted them and say, hey, after a lot of thinking and consideration and weighing our options, we are deciding to move over to Epic for the release as opposed to Steam. And even though, you might have had people asking for their refund, but at least you're being upfront and honest, and they might have appreciated that enough you might have had less people asking for their money back. So, I mean, that's an option. I do understand where they're coming from. It is still an indie title, so I do understand wanting to get the most money, back, but it can go either way. I'm so done with Epic.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
this isn't even Epic's fault, but I'm just done with everything surrounding Epic. Like, everyone hates it, everyone loves it, everyone's talking about it. It's like, let's just leave Epic to do their thing. Yeah,
that's just the thing, is that I can't even be mad at Epic because they are actually taking steps to pay it forward to the fans that feel betrayed. They said, listen, this wasn't your fault. This was Deep Silver's fault. So let us do the refunding here. Yeah. So that's all we have to say about it. It's just that good on Epic.
Yeah, good for them being stepping up, saying, hey, I know it's not our fault, but they put their trust in us, and for some reason you guys don't like us, so here's your money.
Yeah, but bad on Deep Silver.
Yeah, they didn't handle it well.
Yeah. So let's move on to our number 2 gaming news, and this is actually some really good news. Remedy has recovered the publishing rights for Alan Wake and American Nightmare, which is, I don't know if it's a sequel. It's more of just a DLC spin-off. I don't know how to explain American Nightmare. I think it's like a DLC spin-off. But this was once owned by Microsoft. The rights have been converted back to the studio after the Quantum Break flop. So if anybody remembers, Quantum Break comes out. It was a Xbox exclusive developed by Remedy. It flopped. It wasn't necessarily a flop, but it definitely lost a lot of finances for Microsoft. So Microsoft was kind of done with Remedy at that point. So after all that debacle, we're pretty sure now that Microsoft is pretty much done with Remedy. So they said, here's the Alan Wake rights. Go ahead, take it. Now, what's really exciting about this news is that Alan Wake, you could not buy it on digital platforms at all. They had the rights. They took it off of the store just because of lawyers. There was all these different laws that it couldn't be on digital platforms anymore. So now Remedy has the rights again. Remedy does have the rights again, and this is really exciting because now we'll have access to it. What's even more exciting is that this does have the possibility so that Remedy could re-release it or remaster it or put it in a bundle. This is all really exciting. This has a lot of potential. But Remedy, now this is interesting though. Remedy has officially stated that they are fully focused on their next game, which is called Control, which is coming out August 27th. August 27th. And so we won't see anything about Alan Wake, not a leak of news until after they release Control. So sounds like they're fully focused on Control. Mm-hmm. It sounds like they're excited to get back Alan Wake. And it sounds like they have plans for Alan Wake if you really read into the interview, saying like, we're really pleased. We're going to do something with the publishing rights. However, we have a new game coming out. It's coming out in August. It's coming out next month. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like all steam ahead for this.
Yeah.
But now you haven't played Alan Wake.
Nope, never heard of it.
Oh, man. Yikes. No, Alan Wake is a really, really good narrative game. It actually, you would like it. It's more of a spooky narrative.
Sounds like my type of game.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a horror more than it is a thriller.
Okay.
And it's about a horror author writing. It's such a unique story, and you use flashlights as part of the gameplay.
I think I remember you showing me.
Yeah.
Gameplay.
It's a really, really awesome game. And this leaves the potential that this could be a re-release.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I would love to see Alan Wake in next-gen hardware. And I'd love to see that on Xbox One X.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of that, you would also be excited to know that you can play it on PlayStation very soon, because it has been confirmed that Sony has expressed interest in acquiring... This is the number one gaming news, by the way. Sony has expressed interest in acquiring Remedy with the purchases of Xbox, with all their studio acquisitions. It sounds like Sony really wants to bite back and has already shown interest in buying a studio that has worked heavily with Microsoft. So you might see pretty soon in the near future, probably after Control releases, that Sony acquires the studio Remedy, which I think is a really good fit for what Sony wants.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of the gameplay for Control when it was on E3?
No, I don't.
It's really unique. It takes place all in one house. Again, a lot like Alan Wake, it's more of a spooky thriller than anything else. You have one gun, and you have to figure out why the house is kind of doing topsy-turvy stuff, and what's the paranormal activity.
It's coming back to me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. I have the worst memory ever.
But from what Sony is producing, I think that Remedy would be a fantastic fit for what Sony is going for. So if Sony does acquire Remedy, be prepared to just see Remedy just blow it out of the water. So you're going to see Alan Wake on the PlayStation soon. You're going to see so many things from Remedy coming out. So keep your eyes focused on that for sure. So let's move on to our final gaming news. And this is why I said this in the beginning, that I struggle with the idea of being the bad guy, but it looks like I'm not alone, because EA also struggles with the idea that they are a bunch of bad guys.
Yeah.
So this is coming from a GameIndustry.biz, and I just want to pull up the quote really quickly. But in an interview with GameIndustry.biz, we see... hold on. Oh, no. There we go. We see Matt Bilby. We see EA's Matt Bilby come out and say that I don't know why we're seen as the bad guys in the gaming industry. We're so good. Look what we do for indie developers. Now, keep in mind, what we're doing in this podcast right now, Sea of Solitude, is an EA-funded indie game. So yeah, good on them. We're celebrating EA's indie push. However, take a look at this quote. And you can see it on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube. This is coming from Matt Bilby. Bilby. My goodness, Adam, good job. Matt Bilby says, 25 years at EA, and I still struggle with the external perception that we're a bunch of bad guys. We love making and playing games. Unfortunately, when we make mistakes on games, the world knows about it because of the size and scale. And he goes on to say that why are we known as the bad guys? Because look at what we do for indie developers. Look what we did for Unravel. Look what we did for Sea of Solitude, for Faye. Look what we did. And now they're talking about streaming services. They're saying that we're protecting the indie devs because we're looking out for them. We're not leaving them in the mess of everybody. You want to take this, by the way? Because I have a list right here. But why do you think that EA is seen as the bad guys?
Oh, geez. Maybe it has things to do with surprise mechanics.
Oops.
What in the world?
It's so hot in here. We turned off the AC so you won't hear it on the audio. But it's so hot in here that my teacup stuck to my coaster. Woo! It's pretty smoking in here.
Yeah, it's very warm.
Yeah, but the surprise mechanics you were saying?
Yes. So maybe it has something to do with the surprise mechanics. But even though, everyone loves surprises.
Oh, yeah. We love surprises. It's so phenomenal.
But yeah, it's just...
It's just the lies like that.
The way... They're not lies. They're just... They don't handle things well. And they're just not honest about it. And not in a way that they're lying, but in a way that they're just not like, yeah, you pay for stuff in our games. Like, they don't just confront the issue. They just kind of like... Even in this situation, he's not talking about what the question was.
Right.
He's like, we're bad guys, but we do indie stuff. It's like, yeah, but we're not mad at you right now. Of course, we like that you're doing indie stuff. We're mad at you because of this whole surprise mechanic crap that you're throwing out. Like,
and not just that, but we're also mad at them for the surprise mechanics, which you're talking about, the ultimate team packs, the loot boxes. The loot boxes got so bad in Battlefront 2. It got so bad that governments got involved. Yeah. That Hawaii got involved, that Europe got involved. You were so irresponsible with loot boxes that you had to be called to Parliament because of what you're doing,
and not then you denied it.
Now
to their faces.
Now I wrote down just some examples of why we're mad, and I have surprise mechanics, closing studios like Visceral Games.
Yeah, that too.
Studios that don't need it. Now, I do have in my notes here Anthem. Now, I'm not going to put them on Anthem because that was more BioWare's fault. If you have the chance, I'll link it down below. In fact, let me write a note there, Kotaku article. I will link this down below. But definitely read Jason Schreier's take on Anthem's... On Anthem's release. Thank you, Brain. On Anthem's release, on Anthem's release, because it was more BioWare's mismanagement. Because EA gave them the funding and said, "Listen, you have 5 years to develop a good game." BioWare didn't start until they had less than 2 years left. So it was really BioWare's mismanagement with Anthem. And sure, you could argue that EA could have stopped Anthem from happening. They could have closed down Anthem. They could have not let it reach the world, sure. But I'm not so mad at EA specifically for Anthem. I'm mad at BioWare. Definitely read that article. I'll have it linked in the description down below. It's a long article, but after you read it, you won't be blaming EA for it at all.
But just to add my little thing, if you think about it as in a regular work situation,
right?
If, say, you work for a branch of a company, if the branch manager does something wrong, the CEOs will look at the district manager.
Right.
And whoever's in charge of CEOs, the board or whatever, is going to look at the head of the company like, why is this happening? So you can still kind of blame EA because they are the ones in charge.
Right.
And they didn't do anything. So, I mean, you could still kind of blame them.
Yeah, kind of. But there's plenty of things why we think of EA as the bad guys. And this just shows that EA is so disconnected from their audience that they don't even know why they're mad. So they're not going to fix of why we're mad at them. They're not going to fix these loot boxes. They're not going to fix the games that they release. They're only focused on, well, we protect indie devs, and that's great.
It's like the one good thing you do. Good job.
Yeah. And that's great, but it doesn't forgive the loot box situation. It doesn't forgive that you're lying to people. It doesn't forgive that you lied to Parliament saying that you just think of them as surprise mechanics. It doesn't forgive the fact that you're taking advantage of the white whales taking advantage of their wallets.
Yeah.
So you need to get into the stepping. Like, you need to understand why your audience hates you. You need to understand that. You need to go and take some surveys and find out how you can fix yourselves. You can't just pat yourselves on the back and say, like, oh, good job, indie devs, great job. There's really more to it if you want people to see you as the good guys.
Yeah.
You can't just claim,
look, we did this whole good one thing.
Yeah.
We're good people. It's like, yeah, but you did all of that.
Exactly. So now I think before we get even more into this, we can rant all day about this.
Oh, we could.
But we want to celebrate a game that just released, that was published by EA, by the way. It was published by EA. We want to celebrate.
It's an indie developer, so one good thing they did.
Yeah. We want to celebrate this game called Sea of Solitude, and we don't want to rate this game. We don't want to review this game. We're going to be talking about the message behind the game. So full steam ahead, spoilers ahead. If you have not played it, please, please, please pause this episode. It is $20.
Play it.
I think it takes 4 or 5 hours to beat.
Yeah.
It's not that long, and it's so worth your time. So spoilers ahead, and let's just jump into it to our final segment.
Talkie time.
So during this talkie time, we got the chance of playing, not the chance, but it just released Sea of Solitude. This was released by the new studio called Yo My Games. This is based in Berlin, Germany. They called it Sea of Solitude. The initials are SOS. The next game they're working on is also SOS, Sands of Sorrow. Cornelia Geppert, or just Connie Geppert on Twitter, she's always on Twitter just encouraging people and making sure that they're loved and they're valued. And she goes on to develop this game, which is very much about her own personal story and how you can overcome it. She does claim, she always stresses that she is not a professional. This is not professional advice. This is just one story to another story. It's because she can share her story. Maybe you can share your story. So let's just dive right into it. The whole purpose behind this game is to express what it's like to be lonely in this world and what kind of mental health issues that you'll have if you just pursue loneliness.
Well, it's not even what you'll have, because she also does express, she's like, this is just my experience. What you do in this game to help yourself might not be how you help yourself in the real world.
Exactly.
So just putting that at that. Also, this is how she coped.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing. Like, it's all about loneliness, anxiety, depression. So let's talk first that first you wake up on this boat and you're on the sea. Now, in this whole time, this isn't a rating or review. This is just us talking about and explaining what we think happens in this.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the water first and what that water represents. You see a city down below, and the city is supposed to represent, she says that, it reminds me of Venice, but Connie Geppert has come out to say that it is based on her hometown of Berlin.
Yeah.
Of Berlin, Germany, not Berlin, Maryland. I've been to Berlin, Maryland, so I don't know.
Who would automatically? Oh, he must be talking about Berlin, Maryland.
We have listeners in Maryland.
Yeah, but
anyways, I don't know.
Cute.
So you see a city down below the sea, and sometimes the water raises up and goes beneath. What we think that the water represents is just your thought process, because when it's clear out, it's safe to swim in your own thoughts.
Yeah.
But when you get closer and closer, when you go down deeper and you get a closer connection to the city that's below the sea, things start to happen. There's hands out of the water that are trying to wring you down. There's enemies down there. So it's almost like you're trying to drown your memories. You're trying to drown your past experiences with your own escapism mind. Do you agree with this?
Yes, I definitely agree with that. I do know we watched an interview with her, and she also said that the levels of the sea, when it goes up and down at different times, that represents how Kay is feeling in that moment.
Right.
Like how her emotions are. So.
Yeah. But By the way, if you're watching this and you're watching us sweat and you're thinking like, oh, so why are you drinking hot tea? It's to keep my voice clear.
I'm drinking coffee to keep me energized.
Yeah. So we just addressed that. If you want,
next time I'll put ice in it.
Yeah, write it in the comments below. Ask us why you're so sweating so much. But yeah, it's all about that loneliness, and that water level is definitely depicting what you want to drown out, what do you want to escape from, and you're above it, so you don't want to get underneath. You don't want to dive deep into your own thoughts. Now, within this water, when you get more within the city, when you're more connected to the city, there's also this monster that's swimming around it. It's almost like this giant fish.
Yeah.
Hairy fish.
Like a hairy whale.
Yeah, like a hairy whale. Now, we were talking about this, and we were trying to think, this is the one monster that we just could not put our finger on, because when you swim in the water, when this monster is swimming around, it consumes you.
Yeah, like it can catch you and eat you and you die and you have to start over.
Yeah. And it's not even about dying either. It's just, I think it's more about consuming you. It's supposed to just like...
Oh, yeah, I just mean like in the game you die.
Yeah, in the game you die, but I think the representation is all about consumption. This could be almost... I don't want to just say like, oh, it's about depression, because I just feel like that's too easy to think about. That's about depression. But I think it's just more about your depressive thoughts, your self-doubts, everything that goes on in your mind. If you go too deep in your mind and you let those ideas catch you off guard, it can consume you and you're out of the game. What do you think about that? Or do you have differing opinions?
I mean, I think it can be interpreted in many different ways.
Right.
And I think that's why that's the only monster Connie Gephardt didn't tell you what it was. Because all the other monsters, Kay was like, oh, that's this is, this person. Whereas this monster was never a person in her real world.
Right.
So I feel like that was the purpose, was that this monster was up to our interpretation of what it would mean to us to have that in our mind, or it could be many different things.
Right.
So I think that is kind of the point of it, is to open that conversation of like, what is that? What do you think that is?
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think it's just things that are in your mind. It could be anything that goes on in your mind. It could be self-doubt, anxiety, depression, but whatever it is, when you go swimming in your own mind, if you're in there too deep, if you're in there too long, that beast, that monster inside you will catch you and it will consume you.
Like having a panic attack.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking, and then all of a sudden it's just like, it's killing you. So, I mean, I think that theory is definitely a solid one. As someone who's experienced it.
Yeah. Now that's the other thing, is that this game is filled with things called corruptions. And especially the second monster you meet, which it's pretty obvious it's what it is your own anxiety, your own doubts about yourself, and almost your stresses in life, because it blocks your path, it gets in your way, and says you can't get this far. You're just a pile of garbage. You're nothing. Yeah. And you have to get it out of your way to go further in your path. And the way you do it is by shining a light on your own self-doubts. Now, I also have this in my note, but every time that you get into this light and you shine a light onto your own corruption, you hear Kay screaming in pain. Like
she sounds like she's like, this is causing her pain to do.
Yeah. And you can kind of see, you can not just kind of, but you can definitely see that whenever you're trying to shine a light on your own self-doubts, when you're trying to push that forward, it will hurt you. Yeah. It hurts too much to shine a light on your own self. It almost hurts to shine a light on your own self-doubts, because it's necessary to do to move forward in life. Yeah. But you need to shine that light, or else you'll stay in the same place forever. Yeah. What do you think?
No, I definitely think that's another good theory, because to shine the light on self-doubt and try and move past that low self-esteem, the doubting everything you do, that is something very hard to do, and it does I mean, the pain is definitely a metaphor for just how complicated it really is, because, I mean, people struggle forever to get past some sort of emotional trauma that someone's caused in their life.
Exactly.
So, definitely.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This whole anxiety reminds you of things in your life and what you should be reminded of. And it's almost at times like logic at times. And you can kind of see this logic in a bad light, but as we get further into the story, we start to see it in a different light. So there's another little thing that you'll find in a game where you have to shoo away seagulls in the game.
Yeah.
And there's actually a little counter. There's 39 or 32. There's 32 seagulls you have to shoo away.
Yeah.
I only found 16. So I need to go back and find them.
And I had a theory about the seagulls. You're
Yes.
like, what are the... Because the whole time I was like, what are these seagulls for?
Yeah, why am I shooing away seagulls?
Why am I doing this? And I said, well, that might just be like a symbolism. It could be nothing. That could have just been something she throw in. For
Well,
funny.
everything in this game, she's very specific to say that everything in this game has a meaning.
So my theory with the seagulls, because that's another one that isn't said, I think the seagulls are like just those little things in your life that are just like bother you or annoy you or even trigger you.
Right.
Like, that you're just like, get away, like go, like the toxic people in your life.
Yeah.
You know, like.
I wish I could do that with toxic people. Like, shoot.
Yeah. But I think that is what they could stand for, is the toxic people, the things that just make your life harder to live. And it's just like getting rid of them. Like, you're in my way. Like, they're in the way.
Yeah.
And they need to go away. So I think that's kind of what they stand for, is just little things that like are getting in your way of what you need to be doing.
Right. And that's the thing, like everything. Now you have to think about that as you play this game, as you play Sea of Solitude, every single thing in this game has a deeper meaning. Even if you just think that like the seagulls, it's just a little side activity just for things to do. Every little thing has a meaning. And there's things in your life that are just the little things. And all you have to do is just shoot, toxic person.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Or even like little things that like cause deep anxiety. Like with me with electronics.
Right.
Like, and I've said this before, that like the littlest little problem, like my phone being slow just like can set me off. And that, for me, that would be a seagull.
Right.
Like, that's one of the things that's like, I need to let go of that so bad. I'm working on it, guys. I'm working on it.
Now, the first monster that you're trying to like get rid of is this ginormous raven bird. And it's crying, and it's a sad giant raven. And the first thing that you do is go. Now, we're going to be jumping ahead. We very much encourage you just to play this game. But you go through the school because the bird represents her little brother. Going through, it looks like this prep school for boys, because it's always boys ganging up on him and saying, man up, do this. Oh, we're just picking on you because it's funny. Don't you think it's funny? And he doesn't think it's funny.
Yeah.
And you just start to hear these memories of Kay being distracted on her phone as her little brother's just saying that, I don't get all these jokes. Why am I so uncool? Why don't I fit in anymore?
Yeah.
And Kay is just saying, oh, you should see this funny dog picture that I have on my phone.
Yeah.
And Kay just starts to feel this guilt of she ignored somebody who was in need.
Yeah. Like, he was crying out for help from his big sister, and she just was too distracted to hear it.
Right. Like, he's just crying out in need. And all she did was just get distracted on her phone.
Yeah.
And that's just the thing, is that she starts to get this more corruption in her backpack. And the more you're trying to heal other people in this game, the more you're trying to heal loved ones, you start to build up corruptions in your backpack. And we'll get to that in a bit. And I'm sure you can already think like, oh, what does this represent? You can probably already know what it represents, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah.
But again, jumping forward into this, later on, like how you heal your brother is by being there for him. Because even in the end of the memories, he starts to say that, I don't know if I'll ever fit in. I don't know if I ever fit in with these boys. Maybe it's just better if I'm not alive anymore. And you just start to hear Kay laughing because she sees another picture that her boyfriend sent her on her phone. And he said, why do you think that's funny? And then she's just distracted. And Kay just starts to feel this guilt as the monster that she is in the game, saying that I wasn't there for him, but now I will be.
Yeah. She's like, I'm never leaving you again. She's like, I love you. I want you here.
Yeah. And you start to take this corruption away from your little brother. And that's when he turns from a raven into a human again, into her little brother. And then he starts to get on this houseboat that you follow into the sea, but you can't understand him.
Yeah.
Why do you think that you can't understand him yet?
I had thought about that. I was like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that means that even though she helped him, she still has things standing in her way from being the best person she can be.
Right.
You know, because even though he's great, he's feeling better, she can't hear him because now she's struggling still.
Right.
Because I think it has a lot to do with that. She's still struggling. She has guilt now. And also she's still weighed down by other things that she's concerned with.
Right.
So I think it's just that she's not done with herself yet.
Yeah.
You know, she helped him, but now she's got guilt from, you know, ignoring her brother, but also she's still kind of that selfish person. She still needs to work on herself.
Yeah.
So she's not done.
Now, the next two monsters you encounter, there's two monsters. There's a Medusa creature, and then there's a chameleon.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's a chameleon that he's doing.
Yeah, it's definitely a chameleon.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that the chameleon is representing her father, and the Medusa is representing her mother.
Well, it's not really a Medusa. It's more of just an octopus.
No, I think it's a Medusa. I think I read on an article that's supposed to be a Medusa. And Medusa is that you don't look them directly in the eyes, or you don't look into them, or else you turn into stone, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to look it up. But what did you think about the fights in between her father and her mother as I'm looking this up? Just to confirm that I'm thinking the right thing.
I think a lot of it showed the thoughts that children of divorce or unhappy households tend to think, especially if the divorce comes later on in their life, like when they're older. Now, I'm not a child of divorce. I don't know anything about this, so please don't get mad at me. But that, I think she was trying to show that, like, this is actually what they think. Like, when you're watching a TV show and you're like, oh, that's stupid. Like, why would you think it's your fault? But she was like, no, it's my fault. Like, she's hearing them fight, and she's like, oh, my gosh, like, they had me, and it's my fault. Even though, I mean, clearly Kay had no choice in the matter if she was going to be born. But she hears that her mom wanted to have her because she thought she'd fix the relationship. And she's like, oh, it's my fault that they're so upset because I was born. And she takes that burden on herself.
Yeah.
So I think that is like that was an interesting way of showing it, that like this is what these kids actually think when this stuff happens. But yeah, I mean, I think those fights more of showed Kay insight to what her childhood was actually like when she wasn't around, because her parents always made a point to not fight around Kay. Like, they're like, oh, let's not do this now. We don't want to do this near the kids. Don't let Kay hear, like, things like that. So, I think it was an interesting way of giving Kay insight of what her childhood was actually like when she wasn't looking.
Now, I don't know if I already brought this up. I was listening, but the one thing I did pick up, though, however, why do you think that the dad was a chameleon? Because he brought up points that he didn't even know what he wanted.
Yeah, he didn't know what he wanted. He kind of was living that double life of like I said, they kept a lot of it away from the kids. So he was like, and he kept saying he was pretending, or like he changed and things like that, because she was saying like, oh, you were so different when we first met, like all these things. And he's like, well, that was when I was younger. And some people will say anything when they're falling in love and things like that. So I think it does have a lot to do with he's changed a lot, and he doesn't know what he wants, and so he does keep changing. And he is kind of odd in the sense where he goes from talking very nicely
to
the mother monster and talking very nicely to Kay, and then all of a sudden he just flips out and gets very angry and very defensive.
Exactly.
So I think it is kind of that chameleon way of like going from one thing to another, like constantly.
He doesn't have his
changing.
own identity. He's
the father, he's a husband, and then he's the old, you know, the young version of himself, and then he's like, I don't know who I am now.
Exactly. And he even starts saying like, well, this wife won't make me happy. Maybe someone else will make me happy. And it's just this dynamic where the father in the household. Now, what I'm not trying to say is, it's so hot in here. I'm so sorry. What I'm not trying to say is that like every household needs a man to step up. Blah, blah, blah. But it's in statistics that in a family dynamic where there's not two spouses that are raising a kid, it's that kid will end up more corrupted. This is coming from me, a child of divorce, where my dad just did his own thing and really didn't care about my mom, and my mom tried to raise me on her own, trying to be the mom and the dad and just trying to raise me the best she can. She did phenomenal. I love you, Mom. Mwah.
Good job.
Yeah, but it's actually in statistics that the child will grow up to be more criminally active, get in more trouble, develop alcoholism. They will become more corrupted. And that's in statistics. That's in sociology class. Now, the interesting thing is when you're in the final boss battle between the chameleon and the Medusa creature is that anytime that the chameleon breathes, there's like these little children characters that are just trying to get you the different memories. Again, please play the game because we're just jumping here. There's these little children within the game. They're just trying to get you these memories, and they're fine and good. They're playful, but whenever the chameleon breathes fire, the children become corrupt.
Yeah.
And you can say that like when there's a toxic parent within the household, the mom, the dad, the whatever, right? The children become corrupted in the whole household.
Yeah.
Once they spread their toxicity, so will the children, the upbringing of that child.
Yeah.
And you can start to see that within this boss battle, that children in the household will become corrupted.
Yeah.
In this.
Even if you try and hide it from them.
Right.
There's somewhere in the subconscious that kids know. Even if they don't realize they know, they still react in that way.
Exactly. So this is just trying to say that, even so that Kay, who was just trying to keep these parents together in this toxicity, again, this is coming from me as a child of divorce, that child will start to become the middle person and the peacemaker, just trying to make up sides and just trying to make sure that everybody is okay. And then Kay also, once these bosses are defeated, she takes on their corruption into her bag.
Yeah.
And she starts to collapse.
Yeah.
And so the two parents become human again.
And they finally come together to help her.
Right. And they finally come together to focus on her, which brings us to the final boss.
Yeah.
They're on the houseboat, and then you get into this snowy area with this wolf creature.
Yeah.
What does the wolf represent?
Her boyfriend.
Yeah.
Who, in the beginning of that scene, you think is a toxic person and terrible, but towards the end, he notices, he's like, I'm not good and I need to fix myself. And she's just like, no, I can help you. I can do it. Yeah. And he's like, no, don't you see? Like, I'm hurting you. Like, because in the beginning, you're just like, oh, he's a toxic person. He doesn't treat her well.
Well, let's talk about that. Yeah. Is that when you first encounter the wolf, it's this beautiful white wolf with blue eyes and looks gorgeous. And then all Kay does is hug the wolf and he starts to act out, and a piece of his face actually falls, and you see the corruption on the inside, almost like he's wearing a mask. He's just trying to put on a persona of this like gorgeous person, has his life together, and then all of a sudden he acts out and says like, no, I don't need you, I got this on my own, you just stop trying to help me. And he starts to run off, and then you start to see that these different things that Kay's like, I can help him, I can change him. She starts to say that I've learned so much from helping my brother, from helping my parents, that that I can help him with this. Then you start to see, you were talking about this, the good in things. Then you start to see that anxiety that we saw in the beginning, that first monster, block your path again to say that, wait, listen to me. You need to listen to me. I'm blocking your path because this is a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
And Kay starts to defend him, saying, like, you need to get out of my way. I can help him.
Yeah.
But that stress in her life, that conscious, like, has two different, it's a double-sided sword, where that consciousness, that stress, that anxiety in your life is blocking you from moving forward in life. Sure, that's a bad thing. But then you see the other side of that sword.
It's trying to save you.
It's trying to save you and to say, like, no, this is toxic. You're going through a lot. You need to stop. I'm blocking your path.
Like, this is the time. You need to start listening to me now.
Yeah. So you picked that up before I did.
Yeah, because in the very beginning of the game, you see this creature. It's like, oh, it's getting in my way. It's trying to,
right,
absorb me. It's trying to hurt me.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, it's like, she's trying to protect Kay and say like, no, don't you see he's so bad for you? And even before that a little, you can tell she's trying to protect Kay, but like, you have to listen to me. Like I'm trying to help. Like,
right.
You need to listen to me. Like, this isn't good. You need to turn around. You need to stop trying to fix everyone. And that's when I noticed, I'm just like, so this thing is like good and bad. In the beginning, it was bad because it's trying to stop her from bettering herself. But now she's trying to say, all right, you're taking it too far.
Yeah.
You need to focus on you. You need to leave him alone because he's going to hurt you and you need to just let him go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I picked up on that. And I think that is because, I mean, and I've shared this before, that I do struggle with anxiety and depression. So I know that feeling of like, and I know Kay's side of it saying like, no, like, you're freaking out. Like, I can do this.
Yeah.
We're good. I can handle this.
Right.
Of course not in the same situation. But I did pick up on that, where it's like, it is that struggle of like, all right, is my anxiety holding me back right now, or is my anxiety trying to protect me?
Right. And that's just the thing, is that like you get further into the story and you start to see that her cells, right, these flying creatures around the mask of this wolf are trying to protect him, saying like, no, it's good. Like, he's just a good person. He's just misunderstood. And you're trying to melt away the heart of this person. And again, moving forward into this, you start to see that the wolf, like, everything has been shed. You get to see all the corruption in him. And he says like, no, you can't help me. I need to do this on my own.
Yeah.
And you start to see that, like what you said, he's not the worst person. He's just got a lot to deal with.
So he was wearing a mask, but it was actually to protect you from him.
Right.
He wasn't trying to be a toxic person or be like a manipulative boyfriend. He wasn't. He was trying to put on a good face to love someone, but he's just like, no, like, I can't be in this relationship because I'm gonna hurt you. Yeah. He's like, and he's like, no, I need to fix myself and I need to do it away from you.
Exactly. He just says that, like, listen, I'm sorry, you need to let go of me. And as he sinks into the water, as he sinks deeper into her mind, like letting go, he finally says like, and like, I need to take care of myself and you need to take care of yourself, Kay. And he says it loving, not like
like he's saying it like, we need to be apart right now.
Yeah. Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And so she takes on that baggage too into her backpack. So out of the corruption within the world, from the corruption from her brother trying to save her brother, from trying to save her parents, and then finally from her boyfriend, that bag starts to get so full. It starts to get so full that she actually has an emotional breakdown.
Yeah. And all the baggage
just releases.
The whole bag exploded and it all released into the air. And it was following her around.
Exactly. Now, I saw this and I related so well. There's a statistic for youth pastors that they only last 2 to 3 years. And that's just because there's a lot of different reasons. But the biggest reason I believe, and I've seen, is that as a youth pastor, you have a lot of emotional baggage in the same way Kay has.
Yeah.
Because as a youth pastor, it's not just all like fun and games and pizza. you get to hear teenage stories and suicide attempts, and I won't say it's suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to hear the problems in their homes, and he's just you can't really leave it at work. You kind of take it home with you, and then youth pastors just have emotional breakdowns, and that's why they only last 2 to 3 years. Not because they're just tired, but they're emotionally tired and they have emotional breakdowns. Their marriages get so messed up because they don't focus on themselves. They don't focus on their own mental health. They focus on others' mental health. That's what Kay's doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that emotional baggage can only hold so much, and she didn't cure herself. Not cure, I shouldn't say that. She didn't assist her own mental health, that she just had that breakdown. Like you said, the corruption followed her wherever she went.
Yeah, so she had released it, and now it's just with her all the time, and she needed to find a way to let it go.
Yeah. And that's just it. Then you start to see, now we didn't really talk about this. So please continue in the comment section. Please continue your own theories about Sea of Solitude. Your own comments about Sea of Solitude to say that, what did you think was happening? But the one thing we didn't talk about in the beginning was that there was this fairy girl. It was just called Girl. Like her name was just Girl. And we're starting to think that this is the younger, happier, innocent version of herself and just trying to guide her through the world. And whenever she came around, she felt happier, like, oh, I remember this. And so the young, more spry version of herself said, well, I know you're feeling heavy, but maybe we can share the load.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this part kind of confused me because if that's the younger version of herself...
I don't know if it's younger. I think that's just the happy version of her.
Yeah.
You know, and that was just the last time that she was that happy, so that it looked younger.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed like that was just the happy version of her, the one that was free.
Well, the part that confused me is that if they're sharing the load and that represents herself, is she sharing the load with herself?
I think it's more of just balancing. I don't think it's literal sharing the load, but I think it's finding that balance between dealing with your emotions and allowing yourself that joy.
Right.
You know, so she would pass the
corruption to...
Yeah, she would pass the corruption to the happy one so that she could move on.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the happy version needed time, she would pass it back. So it's more of, I think, finding that balance to kind of take your happiness and work on your problems,
right? And
then allowing yourself to be happy for a little bit. It's just giving yourself that balance.
And it could also be, because it's all about loneliness, is having that person to assist you with that, passing it back and forth. Like, I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling this way, and you carry each other's burdens. You don't just say, like, I need somebody to carry my burdens, but you need to carry their burdens as well. You need to each carry the load to get through life, to move on through life. And that's why relationships are just so dynamic and they're so important in life.
Yeah.
I tell this all the time to my students in youth group, and we have something called Accountability Sundays, where I tell them, like, listen, I'm just going to give you an open-ended topic, and I just want you guys to sit down, talk with each other, and share your burdens, and allow yourselves to talk with each other and assist your own mental health. To say that you have people who care about you and you can just talk with them. And that's what I think this last section was. Now, let's talk about the last section, where her anxiety, the one that was blocking the path, got into the water with the consumption fish, and she shone the lights to set a trap for the fish, and the fish consumed the anxiety. And then you get to see Kay as a monster. Get the Kay as a monster, and then you see the baby version of each realm of the anxiety, the depression, and she holds on to it.
Yeah.
That part is the one that I'm stuck on. Because I think it means that depression, anxiety isn't something that's just going to be cured. It's not, but it's something that you can manage.
Yeah. Like, even though she did take care of her past
Right.
traumatic experiences. And
it doesn't mean it goes away.
Yeah, that anxiety and depression, when you suffer from those, now it's one thing if you're anxious over a certain situation, but when you actually suffer from anxiety and depression disorders, they will always be with you. And even if you don't suffer from any disorder, it's also, there's always going to be some sort of anxiety in your life. There's always going to be something that makes you anxious, something that does make you sad or depressed.
Yeah.
You're never going to be perfectly happy all the time. And if someone's perfectly happy all the time, they have a disorder.
Yeah. Like, honestly, like, we live in Long Island right now. And the one thing I just don't care for in Long Island is that everybody puts on this fake smile, and to say that, like, I'm not going through any issues. I'm doing fine. Like, nothing's going wrong. Everything's great. What do you have to be sad about? And it's just like, bro, you got a disorder. And it's just like you said, like, one person who's like too happy all the time. And it's just like, that's not right, man.
Yeah. So I do think that is what those smaller versions of the anxiety and depression were. And maybe that's what they were. It was the anxiety and the depression swallowing. And it is a good symbolism when the depression swallowed the anxiety. Yes. Even that is a good one, because me personally, like, I have anxiety. And when I reach my breaking point, my depression just swallows the anxiety and I'm depressed now. Yeah. So that was also a good symbol in itself. Yeah. But I think the smaller versions of those could mean that it's like
more managed.
They're still with her.
Yeah.
But she knows how to manage them. She knows how to control them, and she knows what she needs to do when they start to get too big.
Exactly. No, I think it got not confusing to me, but it made you think more deeply. Nothing in this game was really confusing. Nothing in this game was really just like, what does this mean? I don't understand.
If you think about it, you can find the purpose behind it.
It's just a game that really makes you critically think and understand what's going on in the mind of Cornelia Geppert and what's going on in the mind of your own self. So I don't think anything in this game will confuse you, but it will just make you appreciate the game more.
I do, however, think that if you've been through some form of depression or anxiety, you will understand it a little bit more than someone who hasn't ever had a panic attack or a depressive state or anything. So and that's why I think it was easier for us to kind of pick out what it was, because between the two of us, we've each had our own experiences with those.
Exactly. And I related to Kay in the way of taking on baggage until I had a mental breakdown. Because just to share with you, since we're on the topic of mental health, I was put into therapy. I don't really care if this is said, but I was put into therapy for many years of my life for depression. But even as a 7-year-old, I used to tell the therapist, depression isn't real. I'm not depressed. Depression's not real. It's just a new word just to say you're bummed out. Or anxiety. I was put into therapy for anxiety because I was a child of divorce and I was keeping two parents together. And I was just like, I'm not depressed. I'm just trying to help people and I just want to assist them, and it's fine. It wasn't until I had a mental breakdown in 2014 after I graduated college and I just didn't know what to do with my life anymore. And I just started to get more and more into a spiral of depression. And I remember telling my mom, it's like, is this what depression is? And she's like, oh my God, Adam. Like,
but then you did it again.
Yeah.
Like 2 years later, you're like, I think I'm actually depressed. I'm like, no, really?
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me? I've been telling you that for months.
And that's the thing. Like, I just never accepted depression was a thing. And that's the thing with Kay. As you're going through this journey, like, I can help people. I can change. Like, I've changed.
Like, she didn't, like, the anxiety of her kept calling her a monster. She's like, I'm not a monster. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. And I related in that way.
Yeah.
Where it was just like, no, I just need to help people. I need to help people constantly. That's why I'm in youth ministry. It's just, I want to help people. I that's why we're doing this YouTube channel. That's why we're doing this podcast. I want to help people. I want to be an impact in people's lives. And if I don't keep my mental health in check, I end up having a breakdown. And that's exactly what this game's trying to say, is that you need to take care of your own mental health. You need to stop being the lone wolf in this.
Yeah.
You need to have people carrying the burden with you so that you don't end up like Kay.
Yeah.
So ending this, how do you relate to Kay?
I mean, I very much relate to Kay, since you shared your story. I grew up with a depression disorder, which I didn't know about until I was in college.
Right.
My parents took me to therapy a couple times when I was younger, but I didn't realize it was therapy until I was older.
Yeah.
And I was in college and I was having breakdowns and just couldn't deal with things. And I remember I asked Adam, I'm like, I think I'm depressed. I'm like, have I ever been depressed before? He's like, yeah. Like, he was just like, yes. Yeah. And I was like, oh, have I ever had anxiety? He's like, oh my God, Liz, yes. Yeah. And I was like, oh. And then things started coming back to me, and I realized I was just like, oh my goodness. Like, I've had anxiety and depression since I was a child. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I called it my guilty conscience, because that's what how it came out in me. My anxiety was I would tell on myself for the littlest things. Like, I remember one time I was carrying my plate into the kitchen. I was like probably 10, and I had part of my pork chop bone was off my plate, and I moved it over with my cup, and I felt so bad. Yeah, I felt like I was in so much trouble, and I told my mom, and I'm just like, and I'm looking back, I'm like, why was that such a big deal to me? Yeah. So that's my experience with it, is that I had it from a kid. I remember my mom at one point told me I wasn't allowed to answer the phone anymore until I could answer it with a happy voice, because people would ask her, like, is Elizabeth depressed? And I was like 6 years old. A 6-year-old shouldn't be depressed. Right. So I grew up with depression and anxiety just always in me. I just didn't know about it. Yeah. But that's how I relate to Kay, in a way of like, I've always dealt with this. This is something I always struggle with, and I constantly have to keep my eye on my anxiety and what triggers it, and constantly trying to deal with it. And even shining, like in this game, even shining a light on that hurts. It does. Yeah. I remember originally when I realized that's what it was, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do about this? Yeah. Like, it's that, like, trying to see, all right, what triggers it? What makes me so anxious? What makes me depressed? And trying to confront that. Yeah. Because confronting that does make me feel bad, because it's that when I'm working too much or I've got too much going on, I say like, oh, this gives me anxiety. This makes me depressed. Yeah. And I'm like, so now I have to see myself as lazy. Yeah. Because I'm like, oh, so I can't work a full-time job and do all these extra things, and I feel lazy for that, but I'm not. So it is those things of like trying to figure out everything. But yeah, I relate. Yeah. I relate a lot. I think this is a good way to end the podcast. There's so much more about this game. There's so much more about this game that you need to check out. Definitely play this game. And if you're watching this on YouTube, and if you follow us on Twitter, definitely tweet at us what your thoughts are. And if you're watching us on YouTube, leave those comments down below. Please play this game and tell us your theories. Tell us your thoughts about the game. How do you relate to Kay? And we want to read that and just really talk about mental health. And we really want to bring more awareness. There's already a lot of awareness, but there's never too much. Yeah. And what this game does is not trying to be a professional assistant to mental health, but it's just trying to get people to share their story. And that's exactly what this game has done. And I think it succeeds. Yeah. And again, this isn't a rating or review, but we highly recommend playing this $20 game. It's $20. It's 4 or 5 hours long. Please give this game a chance. Please, just go through this game. And especially if you've been through depression and anxiety, I think it will be a really good therapy for you. Yeah. It just really made me look into myself and saying, like, am I being like Kay? Am I storing up too much baggage? Will I end up like Kay and just, go into a breakdown? Yeah. If you listen to this, hopefully you've played the game and you're just like, no, I'll do with the spoilers. Even if we spoiled it for you, please play this great piece of art. Yeah. And I'm just going to put out there, you don't have to, but if anyone wants to message me or talk to me on Twitter about my experience with anxiety and depression, completely feel free. I'm an open book. If you want to ask me how I dealt with it, how it started, and more details about it, go ahead, ask me. I'll talk to you about it. If you want to talk about your own with me, that's fine. I'm socially awkward, but I will talk to you about it. At Journey First, at Ace the Grocer, contact
gamesandgroceries.com is the email. So definitely send us some messages.
Yeah.
Comment down below. I'll reply to you.
Yeah, we'll both reply. If you want to ask a specific question to each of us, we can reply. But yeah, we're open books about our anxiety and depression, histories. So definitely, if you want to talk to us, we can. We are not professionals. I'm putting that there. We are not medical professionals. Nope. We are not psychologists.
I was in the counseling.
But we are friends.
I was in the counseling major for a semester, and then I dropped out. But
yes.
Yeah, I think that does it for this week's episode. We can talk way more about this. There's so much more about this game we could have talked about, but we want to condense it. There's the weather dynamics we didn't talk about. There is the lights, following the lights that we didn't talk about. Yeah. There's the messages in the bottle. There's so much more, but again, comment down below.
Yeah, we're definitely open to talking about this game with you too.
Yeah, so definitely subscribe to us on YouTube. We're going to be putting out new content. It's not going to be gaming news anymore. We've talked about it. I think you're going to enjoy the content we put out besides the podcast, but look out for that. So subscribe to us if you would be interested in that. Ring that notification bell. Like this video. If you really enjoyed this, video, like it down below. Comment down below. You can follow us on Twitter at Gaming Groceries or on our own. Excuse me, at Ace the Grocer.
And I'm at Journey First.
And you can also follow us on Instagram, Games and Groceries, all one word. Check out our website, gamesandgroceries.com. We can listen to all the podcasts as well as find out where you can listen to the podcast. And finally, give us your rating and reviews. So give us your honest star ratings, give us your honest reviews. And if you would like me to read your review on the podcast, if it's appropriate, just send me a message, contact@gamesandgroceries.com, and tell me, do you want me to read it? So I think that does it for this week's episode. We thank you so much for listening to this. Definitely play Sea of Solitude. We hope you have a good week. We hope to have you here back next week. I'm just going to end it there. Take care, everybody.